This is the International Space Station. Every day it covers a distance to the Moon and back by orbiting the Earth 16 times, completing one full orbit every 90 minutes, at a distance of 400 kilometers above Earth, with a speed 20 times the speed of sound here on Earth. For it to work, it has been a collaboration of 5 space agencies and 15 countries, and the astronauts on board have been living and working together since the year 2000, mostly Americans and Russians. And even though the initial plan was the station to function until 2015, the space organizations have agreed to extend operations. Right now the agreement goes until 2030, but the future of it is uncertain. One factor is the geopolitical tension between US and Russia with the war in Ukraine, but this may be the mildest one. To understand why, we have to go back in time. During the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union were having a space race, with both countries trying to pass the last frontier for humankind.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
USSR was having the lead by launching the first satellite, which people back then were calling it a man-made moon. And then they put the first man into space. But always the big goal was the moon, the one that both the United States and USSR wanted so much to showcase their superiority. And the USA did it first, ending the space race. After that, the tension between them had cooled down and eventually led the two countries to collaborate in 1997 in the so-called Apollo-Soyuz mission.
Mid-July 1975, an American Apollo spacecraft and a Soviet Soyuz spacecraft prepare to join in Earth orbit.
The US continued the exploration with the Space Shuttle program, and the USSR developed the first station in space. In the same time, the US and some other countries had started collaboration in the development of a space station too. But during the 90s, the fall of USSR ended the Cold War, and the two superpowers started having mutual agreements. One of them was the collaboration in space, with Russia joining the multiple countries group to build the station together. This went surprisingly well. The two countries could work seemingly in space, leaving literally behind them the problems on Earth. The construction of the ISS started by sending the first parts in orbit in 1998, and by November of 2000 the first astronauts were on board. These individual modules covered an area equivalent to that of a 6-bedroom house. Some are controlled by Russia, some by US, and some from other countries. The Russian part controls the navigation, and the US part mostly the electricity. Astronauts on board have done all sorts of scientific experiments, from growing plants to zero gravity to monitoring how the human body is experiencing a prolonged stay without Earth's gravity, essentially making the space station a big advanced zero-gravity laboratory. And for the next decade, the International Space Station was exactly what its name is proposing. Even when the US retired its shuttle program in 2011, it became completely reliant on the Russian Soyuz for space travel without encountering any problem. The war in Ukraine changed a lot the on-Earth relationship between US and Russia. And even though there were some provocative comments about their space collaboration by the director of Roscosmos, suggesting the US to use a trampoline to bring their astronauts in space, nothing really happened. Plus, SpaceX was now capable of sending and bringing on Earth astronauts from the ISS, ending the decade-long dependence on the Russian Soyuz. But the future remains uncertain, since both countries have different plans for the future, since the ISS is getting old. Russia wants to make her own space station, and the US have opened the development to private companies for the next space and moon station. And China, a relatively new player, already has her own space station with astronauts on board, orbiting Earth since 2022. Let's see what the next decades will be in the field that we have been generally very friendly with each other, until now at least.